Well, thanks everyone for coming today. I know that there are a lot of other talks and also a lot of other conferences happening right now, so I appreciate you taking the time to come listen to my spiel. And so I'll go through that spiel really quickly first, and then maybe we can leave time at the end for any questions if there are any. So to get started, my name is Edwin Arbus, and back in the 2000s, I started the first Twitter account for a photo. It's like a TV limit with the predator. Oh, there you go. Should I just do it for public hearing? It was so back in the 2000s, I started the first Twitter account for a US college name. And if you remember this old UI or back in the day, it was the screenshots from like 2008 or so. I kind of miss it though, and I miss the old logo especially. But especially at the time, people thought it was quite serious. You know, why are we on Twitter? There's this 50-year-old uh, politician talking about Eagle Scouts and quicker runs on Twitter. But looking back at that today, like that you can't even imagine politics without Twitter. But the reason why we exact, but why we wanted to do that was for a very specific reason, and we started off very slowly, as you can tell. There we have 13 followers at the time, which is pretty anemic. Um, and but we had a very specific purpose, and we were running for cars in suburban Philadelphia. So that's if you don't know suburban Philadelphia, that's home to Haverford, Swarthmore, Villanova, Bryn Mawr, some of the highest college students per capita in the country. So we wanted to connect with them better and form a community among them, and then hopefully get them to register to vote. And then in 2015, I joined Stripe, and also a retro website. If you remember the Stripe website from 2015, it's skeuomorphic design, which I also miss. And I started the Curie team more. And our goals were a little bit different from that political campaign, but the methods were actually quite similar. So instead of getting our audience to get out to vote, we wanted to make sure that that they were engaged with Stripe, they were aware of our new products, and they're adopted them in successful ways so their businesses would also be successful. And then also hopefully get them to organically tweet about Stripe and evangelize our products. And today, I'm not OpenAI, or a community for our developer audience. And I'll get into that a little bit later. But first, I want to talk about Instant Pot. So raise your hands. How many of you, whether you have now or used an Instant Pot in the past, owned an Instant Pot at one point in your life? Great. And now, how many of you still use your Instant Pot? Okay, so that's what I thought. So why am I asking these questions about Instant Pot? Instant Pot at the very beginning had success through community growth. Robert Wang, their CEO and founder, created a Facebook group in 2015 to let Instant Pot users connect with each other and share their recipes. And the title was a genius move. It created firmware for those who didn't have Instant Pots because they could see it in their Facebook feeds. And instead of traditional marketing, they had their own users do all the advertising and marketing for them on a site where their core audience already lived on Facebook. But if you look at this chart, the rate of new members joining the Facebook community. So I currently found data back to 2017, and this chart is wow. So this is the growth of the Facebook community over time, and it ended up with 3 million people in total. So it was quite stagnant. It was actually quite flat, or the growth was quite flat over the first couple of years. But then in 2019, between 2017 and 2019, it just skyrocketed. And people were just sharing recipes, how they could use Instant Pot in their daily lives to cook faster, reduce prep and cleanup. And I think if you showed your investors or their a similar exponential growth chart, they'd probably be pretty happy. But now let's look at what happened in 2020. think some of us are blocked off that year from our minds entire. But if you, especially the Instant Pot, but if you look at them, their community growth just tanked. So they started off the year, and at the end, by the time we reached 2021, it was barely growing at all and hasn't grown since. Why was that? So Voodoo, this magical cooking appliance that has a really relatively small footprint in the kitchen, we would just throw in ingredients and delicious food gets spits out in no time, be perfect for COVID when everyone's just staying home. And when all the Instant Pot users started being concerned to share recipes with each other, during the pandemic, and even now. But Butter just took a quick peek at what that Facebook community looks like today. So there's a rare screenshot. This was from maybe last week, just before the deadline to submit the slides. And so you can see there's people haven't really left the group. It's just stagnant. It's just been stuck at 3 million members since 2020. And let's scroll down a little bit. So there's that post from David Hadaway. I just put a 3-pound roast in the pot at 10 p.m. last night, fell asleep and put it in the fridge at 7 a.m. Do I toss or fade it safe to eat? Sherry replies, oh, probably delicious. But this is like the screenshot of the first person I saw of the picture. That's the advice. Oh, next one. How do I clean the pot? I washed it with dishwasher liquids and left it out to dry, but this is rainbow coloring. There's probably thousands, maybe tens of thousands of similar posts that are like this. This is the second post that I saw. Scroll on the page even there. From Jeffrey, there's nothing like spending time with family. Met up with mom and had lunch. And I finished dinner with Dodger and I ordered beef burger. Oh, great, Jeffrey. Super on topic. Appreciate your real life update. So those are just the three person on my Instant Pot community that was supposedly their competitive advantage. And what we call in the right industry, those posts are slop. So how is that useful to others in the community? None of those were relevant. We had this super random upload about Slinger Sharon ordering beef burger at a restaurant. We had another one about how do I clean this somehow, which members have probably seen time and time again. They had this really weird thing about potential unsafe food is the litter britter. So we've only got earlier chart on community members where it just skyrocketed exponentially up until 2020, January 2020, and then dropped. That Facebook community growth chart matches almost exactly the number of sales in Instant Pot. So in revenue, it just peaked in 2020 and then has been dropping since then. And if you notice, it actually started peaking at the very end of 2019, just before January 2020, before COVID started. So sales are already starting to decline the first few months of 2020 before the pandemic even started. So what happened? Did they just fully saturate the market? I mean, $700 million in sales a year at the start of 2020 is pretty big. But let's also look at Reddit saturation. There is the Instant Pot Reddit community, the Instant Pot recipes Reddit community, the Instant Pots, vegetarian Instant Pot, pressure cooking food is the pot, Instant Pot scripts, Instant Pot recipes. Well, what is happening there? Which, if I was looking for, if I wasn't on Facebook, if I was on Reddit, which communities do I join? Is there an official one? Is it the Instant Pot one, or is the Instant Pot recipes? And let's look at the supporting ecosystem around Instant Pot. Some more stuff, perhaps. The complete Indian Instant Pot cookbook, the essential Indian Instant Pot cookbook, the ultimate Instant Pot cookbook, videos under pressure. And then is centered on all the guides and random SEO blog posts on what are the best Instant Pot cookbooks. So last year, I think as we all know, Instant Pot is now bankrupt officially. So is all that slop to be blamed? But who's to say maybe a more productive official community on Facebook would have prevented their bankruptcy or even just slowed their growth or slowed their death. I think this might be a case study that many a business school student would probably study many years from now. So, but I think that we can deduce a couple of things. And I thought this is more of a cautionary tale. Instant Pot, as you saw, had linear exponential growth in sales and in their communities. And the community, when I was doing some digging on this, had 6 moderators for that Facebook group. And those 6 moderators were tasked to help triage and moderate those posts. I don't think they're doing the best job as the one as we could see there. But it's not their fault. They couldn't just keep up with that growth. That ratio of 6 moderators to 3 Maryland community members is just crazy. And where do the users find a canonical place to find community? Were community members lost? Did they just fizzle out? They left the Facebook community or just stop looking at it? I thought in this case, growth, as you say, was unsustainable, growth in both the community and in revenue. And they didn't seem to prune or nurture the community in any way. And what happened to the founder who actually created that community group on Facebook? He was the admin. He seemed to have just stopped being active in the community and stopped listening to the members and stopped listening to user feedback. So now this boils into some more relevant examples to today. First up, Stripe. This isn't the most perfect comparison to Instant Pot because it's software and not an appliance that can just be disposed of. And I'm a little biased, but it's relatively harder to integrate a new payments provider into your business, so it can be stickier. But it's also harder to create a community of evangelists around payments. So instead of Facebook, what was Stripe's main community platform? It was Hacker News. Like the Instant Pot founder, Stripe's founder, Patrick Collison, knew that our core audience, developers, and YC startup founders already lived on Hacker News. So we wanted to go where our audience already lived, and then go back in 2011, Patrick chose Hacker News to launch Stripe. That's what he announced that way he was building it, and you could sign up for a Stripe account there. And he didn't do any advertising and marketing. He just posted here on their orange site, and it worked, and it hit the front page. And for every day in my life, it was my job to check the site to see how our audience was faring. And oftentimes we see complaints like this. This user lit a really long blog post about being overcharged or not understanding or how taxes are applied to payments. It had a really poor user experience. And it hit the front page and had 665 upvotes. It's also my job to respond to these as quickly as possible. There were probably hundreds of these over that 10-minute strip. We wanted to first make sure that we addressed the user's issue in the short term, but perhaps more importantly, in the long term, show to the broader community of current and future customers that we were visible and we cared about them, and that we're still very active in the community even 11 years after we launched there. Unless our founder, Patrick, was often faster than me in responding a lot of the time. And it's they're extremely active today if you check our communities. So that's one way I think Stripe was excellent at being receptive to their community. And for the proactive side, I think it was actually a little bit harder because you have to relay at it, you have to be creative, they have to marry what they like and what matters for them. So for one example, I made a demo set for a new product called Payment Links. I don't know if anyone's used Payment Links, but it's awesome. So for when we first launched that, we created a demo payment link and we just tweeted that there. And when customers first tried out that demo payment link that we tweeted, we actually secretly concluded a test transaction. I don't know if any of you were part of unwilling participants in that. And so when we concluded that fake test transaction, that means we collected your debit address because we had to collect your credit card. And with that debit address, we made them miss. It was a total surprise. There's a handwritten thank you mail for being a Stripe customer and some stickers. And these stickers, as you can see, is a little blurry. It has 4242 on it. And there's a test credit card number. It was a credit card number. And every developer who is integrating in Stripe, and at the very end of their integration, they have to test their Stripe integration. They have to type in this fake credit card number and then to see it complete. And these stickers kind of went viral within our community to our surprise too. And it's just a regular circular series of numbers. But it was a shared thing that all of the community members understood and they're almost trained to know. It's like literally in the trainer for developer docs. And so he basically made it a moon, 4242, and relearned into the shared experience that all of our users had. And these types of small commonalities are great excuses to further nurture your community and create uh, conversation starters and further amplify any of your efforts that you're trying to do. And I heard there, I saw someone, no lie, at a coffee shop with the 4242 sticker on their laptop years after this. And I was like, there's another member of the strip parade. Yeah. And so now on to my last example. Great. OpenAI. OpenAI, I think we all know, is a video place. Unlike other companies like Stripe, which is live only in 46 countries, OpenAI is available in 160 countries. And we have many different audiences. We have a consumer product, we have a developer product, and there's students who are trying to use the ChatGPT app to write, and artists using image gen or Sura to make content and videos, and developers using APIs to build new software and businesses, which is what I focus on. And there's, as you can imagine, there's out of camille of those products and audiences. And last week, I don't know if you said, you announced our Codex software engineering agent. That developers use it through ChatGPT, not through the API. So that's a product where it was very easy to think about ChatGPT as a consumer audience, API as a developer audience, but now you have products that span both. So how do we think about separating them? And one of my jobs is managing an online forum. So we have 7 moderators, and if we remember, when I talked about the Instabot community, they had 6 moderators, but we're at a fraction of Instabot size. So that's one data point. And the measurable during this forum is you have to sign up for a developer platform account, create an API key, and then during the forum to chat with other developers paired with APIs. And so occasionally we still get some less students or artists or just random ChatGPT consumer users. Then let the community who are asking random questions about how do I get a refund from my Plus account or something like that, which is not the right place to ask that.
Navigate that whole thing of like they sign up for an API key, they still make it fair.
Yes, they're told us they hit like sign up and then they're accidentally are in this place where they should be. And earlier this year, when they launched ChatGPT image generation, the developer curve actually saw our highest growth in years, even though that it was not a developer product. It was just a feature in the ChatGPT app, just pure for consumers. And consumers were joining this community asking, like, how do I use the app to make an image, or I'm having issues prompting the ChatGPT app. It's not the right forum for that. And it makes the forum less productive for developers, which is what the core audience is, what we've tried to curate this content for. So what we did last month was somewhat controversially. We put this up. So it's almost exactly right. In order to join the forum, you'd have to connect your API developer account in order to start posting in the community. So we added just a tad bit of friction that overall, it makes the experience better for the core audience. It doesn't make the experience better for everyone, but it makes it better for a core audience. And it really made it easy to show my leadership team that, okay, we just had the best month of the forum ever. Growth is literally off the charts, the best in years. But I say it as a bug and not a feature. And instead, after implementing this off page that connects to the API account, our signup rate dropped this month to the lowest in 2 years. So the way that I talk about this, and especially internal or OpenAI, is that absolute numbers is not the best way to measure community anymore. Now, maybe it was in the 2000s or the 2010s when online communities themselves were just getting started as a concept and very primitive. And so it's easy to pursue growth at all costs and pull up the cumulative number charts. But I think times have changed. For OpenAI, they want to preserve this forum for a relatively small audience, developers building with the APIs, so that we can create community among the people. Oh, I think we also said. Oh, there you go. So they can create community among the people using our products and for their relatively niche use cases. And we wanted to make sure that the community had valuable content that's just for them or felt like just for them and targeted and perhaps less slop-like. So although that we had our raise sign-up rate in a few years, we had our highest dairy engage rate in 2 years this month. And that just proves that because we were able to further narrow our goals and our efforts in the community to make sure that everyone felt more productive, even though that we were targeting a much smaller audience, our users were happier. So what's the rest of it? Who's to say? I think it might be easy to say that Instant Pot was a passing fad, but I think it's a little bit more complicated than that. They grew way too fast, and seem to not have managed growth properly, growth in both the business and growth in the community, which was supposed to be one of their competitive advantages. And we weren't attentive to the community. What happened to the admin of that Facebook group? And it seemed that community members just became jaded. Like you saw those posts, and they had very little engagement and weren't exactly useful. That we can look at other brands. Is the Is that just the next ad? That's better. Okay. That's was Lego fad, where they started many decades ago, but then no one can say that they're fad today. They have their online community as well. They capture community interests with this online ideas site. And if any of you have seen it, where kids and any users, adults to our guests, can suggest little Lego products, and they get upvoted and will actually become Lego sets. Or next slide, Pokemon. We all thought it would be a fad in the 90s, but they're still very much cool today. And next slide. Perhaps a better comparison Instant Pot, another kitchen appliance, the Cuisinart stand mixer. We've been steadily and very slowly growing for the past 50 years with a very little user base. So I don't know. I think the moral of the story is that we should all be more like a Cuisinart mixer and steady and slow and not Instant Pot. All right. I think we have time, maybe just about 5 minutes for some questions. Do the micro or I think here first, but yeah.
Okay. You mentioned the example of Patrick at Stripe being very active, more so than you, whose job it was to be active in the community. I find myself being active in the community. I'm also the CEO. I got a lot of other stuff to do. Was that good that he did that? Should founders and CEOs spend a bunch of their time in the community to provide that very sort of authentic, connected, or is that a thing that you should do? You seem good at it too.
You have to find the right balance, I think. And we did try to find the right balance at Stripe. And Patrick's into the flow of like checking hacker news very early in the morning, literally when he first woke up. You can tell because if you're like a 6 around with a person stack, he's like, here, it was users having an issue. We're like, oh, we should do this. And that was very helpful. But then sometimes like I'd caution of the entire company. Obviously, Stripe is in a different bear because it's very large, 8,000 employees, and if Patrick Carlson is posting a stock, oh, what's this user's issue? Yeah, and then the entire company are kind of like jumps on it and like be over it to and it's like maybe didn't need that amount of attention and energy. So I would just caution finding the right balance there. But especially in a very early when it's a much smaller company, especially Stripe in the early days, it just showed that we cared a lot about the user experience.
Just talk. Sure. How do you think about like community building as like a marketing tactic? Like, and more specifically, like I think about the Instapot example, it's like a transactional purchase. It's not necessarily like they're continuing to sell like a Stripe product where you want to continue to keep a subscriber happy. So how do you think about like building community to drive growth for transactional revenue?
Yeah. So my advice there is to build community without seeing it, without making it seem like marketing, which can be hard. You kind of have to like for both Stripe and OpenAI, they had these influencers within the community that we've kind of tapped. People know that we have very close relationships with them. They're in our Slack and private Slack and they're all NDA'd. We give them like special access to things, give them heads up. And that's one way of just making sure that we kind of distribute the message organically. But also just seems a little bit more authentic having it come from a third party, even though that they're under a legal agreement with their companies. But that's when it. But then also there's that's like more of like a one-to-one type communication. But the example of the 42426 was another one where it's like more of a user-to-user communication because we just send the users and then they kind of it kind of been the network grew from there. Exactly. So that's where I encourage you to lean more into. And I know that like Mercury has like a tea package. Shopify has like they give you a little shop voting with a bag after you reach 1 million orders, and also the YouTube career alerts where you get a plaque for and then after 1 million subscribers. That's all part of Curie, even though that kind of was within marketing, because everyone who has those objects has a community of each other. Yeah. Yeah, we'll be driven. How about we get to you and then we'll shift to the side of the at these.
I have a kind of a hobby group, and it started out of a LinkedIn private DM, but apparently the cap is 50. It was like an amazing DM group. It's Boston, Golden Market, and Mafia Hills. And people are like, oh, let's move over to Slack. But then I move over to Slack work, and it's like crickets. So like, what do we do?
Yeah, I would not recommend. So, otherwise, anything that is line chilling. And so Harrison Chase, I think about 2 years ago, we were at a coffee rock. It was like we have this Discord. It's so active. It's really unruly, and they're moving to Slack. And we've developed this firm. And so, why are you doing that? And he's exactly, and it's too much friction, and also Slack is a little bit more of like a, it's got this like more of a corporate feel, especially for their audience for the HR, they're a little bit more down to earth developer type community. And he said, oh, it's just purely resourcing, and because we can't just moderate this huge Discord. They made that decision because they thought it was the better business decision for them from the resources perspective. But I think they ended up making a mistake, and I think if you ask them today, they would with it because no one's in that stock. It's like a couple feet. And
The DM group is crickets and the face.
yeah. So I already don't recommend Slack for something like that. Especially like Gen Z these days, they love group chats. And being able to just make it seem less structured without having just enough guardrails. That would be you should probably just explore different platforms. At OpenAI, we use Discourse, which is a little bit too discourse. That's especially where I have hundreds of thousands of members. That's like very structured with moderators. But if it's just conversations, I'd encourage you to have. Yeah, exactly. Title of a good serial chats.
By the finders of Reddit and Pinterest, and they are testing the beta with just WhatsApp. It's like a closed group and it's working really well. And they have an announcements chat and then just like a feedback chat.
Alrighty, WhatsApp.
Fragile also with OpenAI.
For some things, we have this like that's similar for our like public affairs team, for like some of the international community groups. Yeah. Cool. Yes. So, how do we go this side and we can go there? Yeah.
I know you mentioned like, users could be easily become like the vanity metric. And you talked about like user engagement. Can you maybe talk about or maybe like drill down into what how you can break down user engagement as like maybe like smaller metrics or maybe other metrics you'd look at to see are we building a good community?
I think it depends on the platform. So it's a little bit tough of a question. Like Twitter, like when we always announce something, we always look at quote retweets instead of likes or impressions. For Discourse was the example for OpenAI. We look at daily engaged users as our North Star, because we just when we involved with the Discourse admin, they give you 6 charts. One of them sign up rate, daily engaged users, and monthly active users. And we just chose one metric to like stick with. That was our baseline, and like we have to choose a baseline to continue to measure growth, and that was the one that we thought was best for us. So sorry, that's not super science. It kind of depends on what platform. Unless you had one in mind in particular.
Probably what we use the most is Instagram.
Instagram. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm not the biggest expert in Instagram, but that's well, like you'll have to. And Instagram's a little bit of like a different beast because it's like a more of like a you can't like add links to posts, and like followers and likes are probably an easy metric. Yeah.
Well, OpenAI does a lot of different things. So, and provides a lot of different use cases for a ton of people. How do you decide what community posts are not slot? Like, what tools do you use to kind of set that boundary?
Here's actually our models. So we actually have Airflow integrated into our platform, and it reads every new posts. And when there's a bot that's actually created by Discourse, it's called TrueAsh bot, and it hides and helps triage them the posts and put them in their category. So and a lot of like if you use the NOI consign for Discourse and then just add the AI plugin.
But would you say that it's a black box so you don't know why it's choosing them, or have you set specific like this is too far outside of the core use?
Yes, so you can, especially if you're using some sort of variety integration, you just put it in the system properly and say, if the user is asking for app support and refunds, then hide the post and reply and say, please contact support. So that's how we've tuned it.
And do you champion others, or do you just kind of let them surface on their own?
Champion other posts?
Yeah, like, oh, well, we're releasing this product right now, so let's push a lot of the old posts around that.
Yes, that's fair. So for Discourse as this feature, we can pin posts. But also another thing that we try to do is we actually we choose which post to like officially reply to from OpenAI employees very carefully. So like you can see like it'll have like an OpenAI response. Actually, Stripe does switch to Discourse too, and they had this integration where when a Stripe employee replies, like in the scroller on the Discourse fan page, you'll actually have a tag. It says official Stripe response, just to like boost it up more. Yeah. But
Spaz, how do you work with community moderators? How do you think about keeping them engaged and having them respond in the right way?
yeah, it's quite hard. They're actually all volunteers, so they're all around the world. And actually kind of underplayed their role here. Like we have 6 moderators, but then we have 27 here, more like ambassador types who also help triage and reply to comments. Tomorrow we're actually meeting with all of them, all 27 of them. So every month we meet with the whole 27 member group. Every other week we meet with the moderators. It actually takes quite a bit of time on our end, but if you think about it, like the impact is quite high because you're pretty scary yourself. Like I'm able to scale myself through 27 people who will monitor all thousands of posts 24/7. But to keep them engaged, so that they're very grateful to have this connection with us. And I will also give them some perks like free ChatGPT subscription shares, free API credits, early access to their products.